you're watching this video, I would bet with almost total certainty that you have recently jumped timelines. And that's why things feel so confusing right now, is you're trying to figure out and orient yourself within the new timeline. But what the mind doesn't get is that the old framework, i.e., the old identity that it used to construct itself and find its place within the context of the world and of your life, what it doesn't understand is that old version of you doesn't exist anymore. So your mind is looking for an old roadmap for a set of roads that don't even exist anymore. Who you know yourself to be now is truer and more complete than you have ever been before in this body. And so, what that means is that you are navigating through life in a completely new way. Hey friends, how are you? It's Amar. Happy April. I have another update for you. I don't even really know if it's an update. I think it's just a commentary or a share about where we are right now. I think it's important for you to know that wherever you are in your experience and your journey, and whenever it is that you are receiving this message, it's the perfect time for you to receive it. So even though this is dated in, late April of 2025, this message is evergreen. And what that means is that it lives on its own terms as a standalone message for you at the time that you're receiving it. And it's also, I think, very relevant given where we are collectively at this time. And this is probably going to be a more personal update than I've shared in a while. Part of the cornerstone of my work is to be very transparent, or as transparent as I can or want to be, about where I am in my own personal journey as someone who is, yes, a spiritual practitioner. Yes, I'm a leader. Yes, I'm a guide. Yes, I'm a way shower. And I also am a human going through the experience in my own way in real time, butting up against my own stuff and dealing with my own energies, beliefs, limitations, biases, etc. March was a doozy. March was a whopper. I don't know why I assumed that April was going to be any different, but April is also proving to be a doozy in terms of energies and intensity and shifts. And what I'm finding for the first time in a long time is it is an ascension. The energy that I am personally riding and the arc that I am personally on is continuing to level up. And I recently went through a really big timeline jump. This was, I don't know, several weeks ago, around the beginning of the eclipses. So whenever that was, mid-March. And ever since then, it has been this rapid acceleration. And frankly, I found it to be kind of hard to catch my breath. I found it to be really, really challenging to orient myself and to find myself within my experience and within this expanded identity or sense of who I really am. Personally speaking, what I've been tapping into is how this insecurity program that my old former self was holding, how influential that has been in creating my persona, in creating my identity in this lifetime, and how insecurity as a means to navigate the world as just an assumption that, oh, I'm insecure and this is just something I'm going to have to deal with my whole life. And I'm going to share with you a little snippet from a journal entry I wrote a couple days ago. And what I'm realizing is that the true nature of who and what I am is not insecure in the least. And that I am unlearning that identity of the one who is insecure. It's essentially, in a nutshell, it's essentially realizing that my whole life I have believed that I was Clark Kent and I was trying like hell to become Superman. What I'm realizing is that I am Superman. And what I actually have been in the process of doing is unlearning the identity of Clark Kent. I am a powerful, powerful creator being beyond any sort of limitation or belief system of smallness or insecurity or scarcity or lack or restriction. I am far more powerful than that, but it's that mental game. If the mind has a bias and a belief that says, I am this, it is going to do everything it can to keep me on that track. And the mind can be so powerful, especially when we are dealing with belief systems that have been in place basically since birth. The fable or the story of the elephant who, as a baby, is orphaned and it is rescued by, caretakers, and they rescue the baby elephant. And when the elephant is a baby, they tie it up with a rope. They put a rope around its leg when they're like cleaning its stall or cleaning its stable, or they need it to stay close. And the baby elephant at that time, as a baby, isn't strong enough to break the rope. So it is bound by the rope. The elephant continues to grow and get stronger and bigger. And then before you know it, it's, several thousand pounds as a full grown elephant. And it still lives with its caretakers who rescued it. And they still tie a rope around its leg when they need it to stay put or they need to clean its stall or whatever. And at that point, as a full grown elephant, the elephant could snap that rope like that. But because it grew up being indoctrinated into the belief that the rope is more powerful than it is and that it cannot free itself from the rope, it will never try. After so many times as a baby infant elephant trying to break that rope and not being able to do so successfully, it just falls into the assumption that, well, this rope is stronger than I am, always has been, always will be, and I'm never going to try to break it or free myself from it. So I want to get into some information that I have for you. But first, I want to share a journal entry that'll kind of illustrate where I am personally and what I think is happening collectively. And maybe you haven't been butting up against insecurity. Maybe you've been butting up against your own issue. So I'm not saying that everybody is dealing with some sort of insecurity at this point. What I am saying is that I think that collectively where we are is we are butting up against the old reality and the old assumptions and biases that we had that were a part of being indoctrinated into that old reality. And that old reality was ruled and governed and created by the false self. And I think that where we have been since that eclipse began in March, the eclipse portals opened in March, we have been timeline jumping. And I have some insight that I'm going to share with you about timeline jumps and kind of how they work. And perhaps this will explain some things for you. So my hope with this update is that this helps you put some things in context that perhaps weren't in context before. So what I'm going to read for you now is a journal entry from a couple of days ago. Insecurity was the invisible barrier that kept me from experiencing fulfillment. For my whole life, up until a few days ago, really, I just assumed that insecurity was something I would have to live with and learn how to deal with for the rest of my life. Kind of like being born with a leg that was an inch shorter than the other one. I keep running up to what used to be what I thought was the edge of my life, expecting to butt up against a dead end or a barrier, but it's not there anymore. The leading edge of my reality has expanded way beyond where it used to be. And there's still a small reflexive bracing that occurs when I come up to the former limits that are no longer there. Like I've been living in a yard with an electrified perimeter and a collar that shocks me every time I get too close to the perimeter. The perimeter has been deactivated, and it's just taking me a bit of time to get accustomed to the fact that the scope and range of my landscape has grown exponentially in the past few days. So that's kind of a summation and in a nutshell of where I have personally been. And again, I'm not saying that you are dealing with insecurity in the way that I have been realizing was just a part of this old persona that was kind of baked into that version of identity. But I do get the sense that many people are now in this new reality and perhaps they don't know it yet. And perhaps they just think that something's wrong or something's off and they can't make sense of it. But I really think that a lot of what this can be attributed to is what happens when we jump timelines. Right now, we are in a building phase. You are building the reality that your future self will step into and inherit. So whatever choices or actions you are taking, no matter how small and seemingly insignificant, the truth is that with every choice and every action, you are building momentum towards the full integration of your expanded self and your future self that is now arriving in a fuller and fuller way. It continues to expand. It's like a slow trickle into a vessel, and it's slowly filling you up. You are building momentum towards the reality that your future self will step into, and it's important right now that it be deliberate. And if being deliberate means tiny baby steps, then so be it. Because building momentum deliberately is how you create sustainability. Certainly, you can take a shot of caffeine or a shot of an energy drink and get a whole lot done in that 45 minutes or an hour that you're amped up from that caffeine or that energy drink shot, but you're inevitably going to crash. Where we are now is moving into a new reality. This is not temporary. Nature does not go backwards. This is resurrection. This, I think, in the biggest sense, is resurrection. You are preparing to shed the old skin completely. and to be resurrected. And it's no surprise that this is happening around Easter, which is when the story of Jesus being resurrected is occurring, and that there is an actual energetic state that is supporting this resurrection. And here's the key with resurrection: resurrection is always to emerge in a new form. To be resurrected doesn't mean that I'm going back to an old way. Nature doesn't create backwards. She's not sitting around looking for a way to bring back the dinosaurs. She is always moving upward and outward and forward. So, your resurrection in this new timeline that you have jumped into isn't about going back to a previous state. If you're watching this video, I would bet with almost total certainty that you have recently jumped timelines, and that's why things feel so confusing right now, is you're trying to figure out and orient yourself within the new timeline. But what the mind doesn't get is that the old framework, i.e. the old identity that it used to construct itself and find its place within the context of the world and of your life, what it doesn't understand is that old version of you doesn't exist anymore. So your mind is looking for an old roadmap, for a set of roads that don't even exist anymore. Who you know yourself to be now is truer and more complete than you have ever been before in this body. And so what that means is that you are navigating through life in a completely new way. You are unlearning the boundaries that restriction and limitation placed upon you and your life. The question is, and I really do believe that this is the broader picture, because that's, I think, to me, this point is ultimately the point for any soul's journey: is what is it to know yourself as the creator? What is it to embody being the creator? What is it to move around the world, any world, whether it's the physical planet of Earth or an etheric experience or another planet or another galaxy or another version of reality? What is it to know yourself as the creator? What is it to remove the barriers that have been created within you due to programming and indoctrination that tell you that you are separate from your creator? So here's where I want to talk a little bit about the timeline jump. And timeline jumping, I think, is one of those mythological things that gets a whole lot of buzz in our spiritual circles, but that a lot of people don't fully understand. And I can speak from my own experience that I didn't really fully understand what it was to jump up in a timeline or to jump up in a frequency or move into a new level of awareness until very recently. And I am not saying that this is the only way it happens. I am sure there are other people out there who have other opinions and other experiences with it, but what I am sharing with you has been my understanding of what happens when we jump timelines. I think that oftentimes, or speaking for myself, I often had this idea in my head that the timeline jump was sort of the culmination, that I would do all this work and build all this momentum and have all these insights and do the rituals and do the things and, bang the drum and burn the incense. And then magically I would jump into this timeline where things would be different and everything would be changed. What I see now is that I think a lot of healing and releasing actually happens after the timeline jump. Once you are doing your work and you're aware of your limitations and you're looking at your blind spots and you're exploring the shadow and your light, you're going to the full extreme edges of your experience, all the way to the edge of your darkness, all the way to the edge of your light, to find your center so that you can rise through that ascension column. And when you're in that center and you're locked into that column, that is also where the higher self descends down and completes the merging process with you. So yes, there's healing that occurs to get us to the point where we are able to make the timeline jump. It's like cutting the sandbags off of a hot air balloon. And doing your work is really what facilitates a timeline jump. It's as simple as that. Getting in and doing your work, your inner work, is really what opens you up to be able now to ascend to a higher frequency. And then as you level up or jump timelines, then is when the releasing begins. And the releasing phase is similar to physical therapy, where you are recalling how to function without the previous injury or trauma. So you go into the hospital with a broken leg, you go through the healing process of resetting the bone, of putting it in a cast, of letting yourself regenerate and regrow and heal. And then you begin the physical therapy where you are learning to walk again without the trauma or the injury. That's really what happens when you have a timeline jump. Is you get into this new reality, you raise your frequency, and you are now in this process of learning how to be in the world, in life, without the old stuff that you have healed and released. And that's when integration begins to happen. And integration is the phase after physical therapy. Integration is like, okay, now I'm back in the world. Now I'm in my life. Now here I am again, but I'm changed. I'm different. And even though now I know how to walk without the injury or the trauma, I'm still figuring out, who am I in this life without that injury? Who am I in this life without that trauma? So, as you are moving through this new reality, you are moving back into a functional state where you begin to explore and expand in the new frequency. It's like you've moved into the new neighborhood, and now you're figuring out where to go, what to do, and who you are within the context of this new reality. The foundation for everything, from my perspective, is doing your inner work. If you want to jump timelines, you do the inner work. You want to see better manifestation, you do the inner work. You want to attract the people in your life that, align with who you are now, you do your inner work. You want to find the reality that matches the frequency that you desire, you do your inner work. The timeline jump that I have recently experienced 100% happened as a result of me doing my inner work. The surprising thing is that when I got into the new reality, suddenly I was faced now with all of the things that could no longer stand. The healing that I did brought me face to face with a lot of these ideas and these concepts and the energy of them and the emotional baggage that was a part of them, but I had never lived as the version of myself who was no longer bound by the trauma. Another thing that's happening right now is we are being called to drop the model of a centralized source of right and wrong, good or bad, where you should be, where you should go, what you should do, and who you are. We're no longer looking for an outside source to be an authority. The ultimate authority resides within, and certainly there may be external authority figures who resonate with what you believe inside, but this is where you're going first. This is where you're going to check in and go, is that true for me? Do I really believe that that's true? Do I really believe that that's possible? Do I really believe that that's who I am and that's what I can have or not have? And then once you find the resonance of your own truth, it begins to attract a new set of authorities to you to help continue to guide you forward. When we haven't dealt with our shadow and we externalize our darkness, we begin to attract figures of evil on the external stage. When we have not integrated our light and we do not claim our light, then and we externalize it, then we begin to attract false lights, false authorities, false leaders, and false rulers. Because if we have not claimed the fullness of our experience, we can't ascend. You cannot ascend at the exclusion of any part of you. Ascension is the process of integrating all that you are, and as you integrate, you continue to build this momentum that is what allows you to rise in frequency as you cut away the baggage of those old beliefs, of those old identities, and the things that just aren't true anymore. A part of this also is abandoning groupthink. And what I mean by that is this idea that tells you, well, if the world is unhappy and frightened right now, then you have to be unhappy and frightened right now too. If you're looking at a source of news or information that is telling you the world is on fire right now, things are really hard, things are really bad, markets are crashing, people are dying, all of these horrible things are happening, so you have to be afraid and you have to be scared and you have to be hiding in your room, that's not necessarily true. You have the right, and I believe you have the duty to yourself to question that and say, okay, it's not about denying what is happening on the world stage, it's about deciding what that means for me. It's about deciding what I want to do in response to that, if anything. It's about deciding, how do I process that information and integrate it into my identity of who I know myself to be, not letting the outside world say, because these things are happening, this is who you have to be. That's not the way it works. And I really think that a lot of what is happening right now for many people that can feel so scary, and even for myself, right on the macro level, we are seeing these, systems and organizations and institutions and individuals rising and falling. And it's really disorienting for a lot of people because the source that they use to invest themselves in is like, oh, this is the truth, this is the safety, this is the support and the stability. Now they're saying it's not necessarily true. How that's happening in the micro individual level is challenging changing your own belief system about who you are or who you were and seeing what that does to you in terms of the limitations that it places on your reality. It's like you're a screenwriter and you're writing a character, and the character that you are writing, its belief system creates a very specific set of outcomes. And if my character is one who, oh, I'm unlovable, bad things happen to me all the time, and life just sucks, and then you die, that is a very specific set of limitations of what that character can be, do, or have, or experience. Conversely, if I'm writing a character about, this belief in anything is possible, I reside in the realm of miracles, I'm a powerful creator of my own reality, that opens up a whole new version of reality that is available to that character. You are the screenwriter and the character. So what you are living out and what you are experiencing is directly correlated to who you believe you are, what you believe about the world, and how you navigate through it. There's also one more thing I want to touch on before I end this video, and that is a lot of people having really, really intense ascension symptoms right now. Lots of fatigue, energies, and emotions that are like spiking really, really high and then really, really low, and we're feeling like we're tossed and turned all over the place. I think a lot of what this is due to, not only because you are in this reality that might look the same but feels completely different, and now you are a version of yourself that you've never been before, trying to figure out how to navigate through this landscape, but also you are operating at multiple levels all of the time, right? You are a multi-dimensional being, and the levels of operation that you exist on are infinite, and there's a multitude of them. Usually, what happens in the past is that activity would be dormant on pretty much all of the levels except for one, right? So you could focus and conserve energy and direct yourself in a very specific way, in a very specific bandwidth of reality. Now, because you are expanding, your field is expanding, as well as the field and the frequency of Earth is expanding, your capacity has increased. You are now operating at a much fuller capacity on multiple levels simultaneously, and this just takes a whole lot more energy. All of this is to say, if you're confused, it's okay. If you're uncertain, it's okay. If you're not clear where to go, what to do, it's okay. In those moments, just come back to the question of, how do I know myself as the creator right now, and move from that place. Give yourself the time to be in stillness and silence. Give yourself the time to be in your own inner space. Give yourself the gift and the grace of deciding that you are going to make your inner state a priority and do everything that you can, even if it's only 5 minutes a day of sitting and breathing and listening to yourself consciously and deliberately. That's all it takes. And as you continue to expand in this new reality with the assumption, the certainty that you are the creator in a physical form, that begins to change everything. How would you act, proceed, behave, respond? What would you say? What would you do? What would you think? What would you say yes to? What would you say no to if you knew yourself as the creator unequivocally, without doubt, without uncertainty in every single moment? I think that's the key right now. Thank you for watching. I love you. We'll chat soon. Bye.